Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 30. It's the Lions Tour Roundup, plus we name our Lions All Blacks Super 15 and make changes for 2021. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hi guys, good to have you back. We're at episode 30. We're steaming along. I'm joined, of course, by Dan. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. Are we going to count every episode by the World Cup 2019? It could be.
We're at episode 742.
Well, as long as you can count that high, we're cool.
Excellent. We may change the format. I did hear from one of our listeners that I always introduce Dan, but I never introduce myself. So, hi everyone. I'm Andy.
Oh, that's your name. Okay, cool.
Glad you knew who you were chatting to.
Yeah.
Are you going to say anything in welcoming everybody to today's episode?
Am I?
Yeah.
Hi guys, welcome. Were you hoping for something a bit more poetic?
Yeah, I thought maybe you could have found something more poetic to share with our listeners, but maybe not. No,
that's fair enough. I do only ever say hi to you. Hi guys, thanks for listening. We appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to this episode actually. And this is obviously to you and our listeners. Obviously, we've had a few days to digest what happened. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think this has to go down as a pretty good tour in terms of the result.
It has to, right? Yeah. I mean, overall, it has to go.
The Lions were written off. The pundits were saying 3-0 All Blacks, and were expecting big wins on all three occasions. And as it was, the first game was very close. The second game, the Lions won, and the third game couldn't have been closer. So, that has to be a positive result. It still sits a little funny just not having a result, but I think in some ways it's quite nice. There was no way to sort of separate the teams, and I'm sure there'll be people that will say, oh, but what if this and what if that? I know because I'm one of them. I said it about the first test, and I'm sure there are plenty of All Blacks saying the same things about the test match just gone. But
have you watched it again?
I haven't had a chance to watch it again, no, but I plan to. It's sitting there waiting.
I've watched it again. The All Blacks. So for me, just to go to that bit, I have no issue with it being a drawn series. The match was a draw. I'm not one of those who buys into you have to play for a winner. Obviously, you get it in knockout competitions, but for this, I have no issue with that whatsoever. I watched the match again. I think the All Blacks will be kicking themselves. They missed so many opportunities.
They did, but that wasn't just in the last game. They missed so many opportunities in every game. And at some point you have to say, because I got to be honest, if we played the All Blacks or if we played the Lions, we'd probably miss a fair few opportunities. Well, we probably wouldn't have many opportunities, but do you know what I mean? Like there comes a point where you have to say, well, if a team continually misses their opportunities, then something is fundamentally wrong with the team. And I know that's probably a slightly weird thing to say about the All Blacks, but it happened 3 times on the trot.
Okay, so I'm actually a little bit worried about this. So the All Blacks, everyone was saying, and they are one of the greatest teams of all time, one of the greatest sporting teams of all time, if you look at results as well, and what they've achieved. But this is my issue. Are they now sort of going back to drawing board saying, we've missed those opportunities, and are they going to work on just getting even better? It almost seems sort of counterproductive to highlight their faults because we know they're not a team to sit still. They will go back and improve. But equally, maybe, and this is what I actually think, I think the reason they made those mistakes is because the Lions forced them into the mistakes. I think you got to look at the likes of who have the All Blacks lost many of their matches to, sort of England, Ireland, Lions. Who's been involved in all of those? Andy Farrell. From a defensive perspective, maybe he knows how to defend the All Blacks.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. It's it's a weird one because, like you say, one of the best teams in the world, one of the best ever teams in the world. They are the best team in the world at the moment. And yeah, of course they're going to go away and work on it, and of course they're going to try and get better. But I think other teams have learnt things from this too. Maybe not every team is capable of reacting to it in a way that's going to change anything. But certainly your Englands, your Irelands, they're going to look at the other Southern Hemisphere teams. You're going to look at that and say, okay, look, there were a lot of mistakes made. What happened to cause those mistakes? And I think it's like you say. Yes, some of it you can put down to just handling errors, and these things happen, but you really need to be able to, limit them. But I think the fact that it happened 3 times on the trot, you have to say, well, the pressure was clearly too much for them. And I would think the Southern Hemisphere teams are going to look at it and go, well, these Northern Hemisphere sides who play differently to us have done something that's rattled the All Blacks and caused these problems and resulted in this draw. And maybe we'll start to see, a little bit more of what we do up in the Northern Hemisphere happening down south, because obviously we know that we're all trying to do more of what they do.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's it. I think there's actually almost been a formula figured out how to beat the All Blacks. It's obviously not going to work every time because they're just too good rugby players, but I think people now have got to stand up and take notice. Unfortunately, I don't know how much the championships going to highlight that, because South Africa against France showed some improvement recently, but England beat Argentina fairly easily. Not fairly easily, but bearing in mind the amount of players we had away.
I was going to say, like an entire team.
Yeah, Australia are just in a terrible state at the moment. The Aussies, I was chatting to an Aussie the other day actually, and it's almost as if they're blind to it. They're just some of them are just morons. Just like, Australia are the best rugby team in the world. I'm like, what? Do you know what rugby is? But if these guys, and Australia rugby is in a bad place, but if they do sort of stand up, try and figure it out, and just realise, actually, we start pressurising these guys, there's they're beatable, but equally. Let's not worry about these Southern Hemisphere teams.
No, absolutely. Look, I've said it for a long time. We talked about it before this Lions series. When it comes to the All Blacks, if you can put them under pressure, and particularly if you can put them on the back foot, they struggle to come up with a solution. They're used to getting an early lead and just continually building on it while other teams crumble around them.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the Lions didn't. I don't know what I think you might know. What were the stats with regards to Lions leading games?
Yeah, so this was interesting, and you set me up nicely for that, pretending I hadn't already mentioned it to you. I like it.
You're welcome.
But yeah, it was really interesting. So over the 3 tests, I was about to try and do the maths. I think it's sort of 240 minutes worth of rugby. The Lions only led for 3 minutes of those 240 minutes, and that's quite astounding, really. Bearing in mind, which was obviously the last 3 minutes of the second test. So the All Blacks led, or it was a draw, for 237 minutes, and we led for 3 minutes, and we still came away with a series draw. But that doesn't really mean anything because the results are the results. But it was quite an interesting stat when I saw that. And I think it goes to show that actually with the All Blacks, because there were times where they had, in the second test, they had quite a good lead. As long as you keep smashing them in defence, keep pressurising them, cracks start to show within them. And actually we chased the game. We still defended hard, chased the game, and ran in 2 tries to their none.
I think that's one of the key things, isn't it? Is, you look at the Lions' performances across all the games, they never gave up. Other teams, and the All Blacks are a good example, although we didn't see it on this tour. Other teams fall behind and everything kind of falls apart. Where the Lions, every time they fell behind, they did just enough to get back, whether it be level or within range. And ultimately we've seen what's happened as a result of that. And, that's great to see because there's nothing worse. It's all well and good playing exciting, expansive rugby where you're chucking the ball around and, scoring loads of tries. But what you don't want to see is one team totally dominating the other every time you watch them play. And I think the Lions showed that there's something in their style of play. Maybe it's something about Northern Hemisphere rugby. There is definitely this kind of don't give up attitude, and it worked in their favour.
Yeah, I mean, my take from the tour, and this is how I would sum it up. I think the All Blacks were a better team. I think the Lions wanted it more, and it sort of cancelled each other out. But mate, I mean, we've probably spent quite a lot of time on sort of going through the ins and outs. So one thing I read, but I really want to bring up with you, there was chat. I think it was on BBC website or something, that Gatland is a potential manager for the 2021 tour.
Well, so I don't know. I haven't read this on the BBC website or whatever it is you're talking about. But Gatland was interviewed after the game and asked, "Would you coach another Lions tour?" And he said, "I don't know what the future holds. For now my focus is on Wales, and I plan to be there only until 2019, unless they sack me before then. But you can't ever rule out another Lions tour." So I wonder whether it's just a load of journalists have decided, oh, that's close enough to saying that he's going to be the next one, and they've run this story to get everyone going, what the hell?
Yeah. What would your thoughts be on that, though?
I think it would be a mistake. We've talked about Warren Gatland, and we've talked about he's a good coach, and despite the result, I think you summed it up just moments ago when you said the Lions wanted it more, and that's the individuals.
Yeah.
They weren't that clinical, which is more about the coaching, about the players too, obviously. But I kind of felt, I think the draw is something that the players earned rather than the coaching beyond Farrell's defence. And I just, we've talked about it. And then actually this sets us up nicely for my first question to you, which is, Alan Wynne-Jones, we gave him a lot of abuse, me in particular, over the course of the tour, particularly when he was, not particularly when he was given test starts. Did he justify, not his place on the tour, but because obviously he justified that, but did he justify his place as a starting lock? Or were there better options?
There were better options, definitely.
And so does that not almost immediately tell you, there's one error that Warren Gatland made? He picked the wrong guy.
So someone said this to me. I was having a chat the other day with a few of the boys from a rugby club, and their take on it was, Gatland, in fairness to him, when he recognised mistakes from the first test in his selection areas, he was willing to change them. I'm like, okay, I'd hope a good coach wouldn't make those mistakes to start with, if I'm honest.
But also, one of the biggest mistakes you would think would be the selection of Alan Wynne-Jones, who seemed to be, whether it was an injury or not, is kind of irrelevant, but he was on that pitch for a good 30, 40 minutes, stumbling around, not really having any impact. He was the one person that everyone was talking about afterwards, saying that was a mistake. He didn't do anything about that one. He didn't correct that one. He put him back in. Now, in fairness, Alan Wynne-Jones stepped up and he had a fairly good game in the second test. It wasn't a man of the match performance or anything like that. And I'm not sure it was therefore something to justify his inclusion in the first one.
I don't think it's justified at all. And I don't want to be too harsh on Alan Wynne-Jones. Look, it's not his fault.
There are going to be an awful lot of players who are great rugby players who don't get to be part of the Test 23. You're talking about picking the best 23 across all the positions.
Henderson, that guy must be gutted.
So what I mean is, this is, as you say, this is not a dig at the player. Anyone on that Lions tour and everyone there deserved to be there.
Apart from the Geography 6, as they call them.
Yeah, they don't count. They weren't on that Lions tour.
Fair enough.
They came to watch and brought their boots.
And
didn't have to use them. So they don't count. But everyone who was originally selected, either was warranted or justified their place on that tour. Come the end. But I think it's okay to say, look, when you're looking for the best 23. There are guys in that 42 or whatever it was who aren't going to make that 23. For me, Alan Wynne-Jones is one of them. It's not it shouldn't be seen as, a dig at him as a player, because he's a great player, as you say. I'm just not sure that he is, in the top 3 locks that went or even didn't go.
So in that vein, when we're talking about was he the best player, Jonathan Davis was given player of the tour.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think I have to agree. I think
I 100% agree. He was my player of the tour.
Yeah, he was just solid all the way through. You know, other players had good days and bad days, and he didn't really seem. You know, barring that injury that he got. I don't know if it was an injury that kept him out beyond that one game, but you know, where he was taken off. I think it was maybe the second or third midweek game. The first time they tried out Farrell at fly half, and Tio and him together were looking pretty sharp, and then, you know, within 10, 15 minutes he took a knock and he was off HIA and never came back on. Do you remember?
Of course.
So I think that was the only time he played where he didn't perhaps have long-term impact, but that's because he got injured. So every other time he stepped on that field, I thought he played brilliantly. So I totally get it. And yeah, I think well deserved.
I think so.
What about from an England point of view? Because that's obviously what we're all about now. Who was your English or England player of the tour for the Lions?
Oh, Maro Itoje. Mate, the guy was a legend. He was my player of the tour from England. And I thought his second test, like, people said he didn't have a good game. Actually, I watched that again. He did have a good game. He just made a few mistakes that he doesn't normally make. And that doesn't help. But, like, actually, and it was you that pointed this out to me at the time, his stats were still amazing. Like, his tackle count, his ball carries, his meters made.
And he's still young, and those mistakes are going to be easily eradicated, you know, as he gets more experience playing at the highest level.
Yeah, sure. And you know what? Sometimes you just have those days where things... I'm not going to call it a bad day, but it didn't. So he may have fumbled the odd ball or something. So in return, he goes and ups his tackle count. You know. Yeah. So
I mean, he was definitely my England player Lion of the tour. But I would be surprised if he wasn't kind of up there in the running for the player's player and official player of the tour.
So I think he got second most votes.
Right, well, there you go. So
from what I saw. But he would have been my player of the tour. The other England players, because obviously that's our key focus, who I'd like to mention, I thought Courtney Laws had a brilliant tour.
Yeah, he's definitely thrown some question marks Eddie Jones's way, because that's one area there's just so many to choose from, and we're gonna talk about this in a future episode because there's a lot to talk about on that front.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I think the England boys in the second row did brilliantly, and yeah, they'll be asking questions.
Yeah, I like it, and I like the fact that we've got those England guys going back, and with that experience, it's and again we won't even touch this now because this is a whole episode to itself, sort of looking at just purely from an England perspective. But whilst we're on that, what also I quite like is and again I'm not going to get annoyed about this because I don't know if this. I suspect it's media made up, but they were talking about in the autumn internationals. Make the Barbars team the Lions team and do a fourth unofficial test. Luckily, the RFU have come out and said, no, we're not releasing the England players, which I think is good. I think you just make a dick of the Lions if you do that. And I think
100%. And also the Barbars play a certain type of rugby. So to just kind of use it, like if you're going to do that, then just put the Lions back together for a day.
Yeah, and
I
that's
wouldn't
a good
do that
point.
either. But
no, I wouldn't.
You know, clearly, someone has said no. So the idea of creating a Barbars team that is the Lions team, it's never going to happen, is it? It's just getting around it, and it doesn't go down as a Lions result. You know, if you look at Lions history, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Whoever suggested it is ridiculous. The idea is ridiculous, and it would have been ridiculous if anyone had agreed to it, but they didn't. And
you hope they drown in a bag.
Yeah, that's been tried. Yeah,
that seems a reasonable response.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, sorry, mate, just one last question, but I wanted to sort of fire at you just about this Lions thing. So 2021 Lions, what, if anything, would you change about the tour? And we're talking sort of a wider thing, obviously. Let's take out selection and things, but just as an overall tour, what, if anything, would you change?
All right, so actually, one of the first things I think I would change is I would have a coach who wasn't a current international, or at least not a current international coaching one of the four nations.
Okay.
Because I think I think and it's not just Warren Gatland. It's been done pretty much by every coach that's ever coached the Lions. If they also coach a national side, they favour that national side. And the Lions has to be about form.
Yeah, I mean, I like that thought. I think the thing I'd like to see is the Lions have a bit more prep time together. Now, to do that, I think you'd need to make the Lions tour start later and finish later, which may affect the beginning of the next season from some players, because you can't really send a Lions tour, because especially so many of them were involved in like Pro 12 finals, Premiership finals. It's probably not fair to take them away from the clubs there. But then if you start the Lions tour later, and there may be reasons you can't do this, I don't know, but I don't see what they would be, and then finish later, I'd quite like to see that, because I just think give the Lions an extra week, an extra 10 days all to train together. Yeah, you saw the Lions rugby was just getting better and better. Yeah. And if you've got that extra week, you're watching better rugby, like not just from a Lions advantage perspective, but just to see better rugby.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's probably quite a good one. And I think quite a lot of pundits said, didn't they? If this Lions team with an extra week, an extra 2 weeks to prepare, would have won that tour.
Yeah.
Also, of course, which is one of the questions I've got for you, a Billy V. Would Billy have been enough to turn the tour in the Lions' favour? We don't often like to say one player has the ability to change things, but if there is a guy out there that can, it may well be him. What do you think?
It's a tough one, because Toby Faletau, I thought, had a really good tour. Actually, I sort of looking at his stats and things, he made a lot of meters, a lot of tackles. So Billy would have played if he was there, because I still don't think Faletau touches Billy. I think Billy and Kieran Reid are in a league of their own.
But do you not think the All Blacks know that? And therefore, a Billy, even if psychologically, would have created more opportunities by sucking in maybe sucking in the extra player. Just I don't know, just that little, people just being a little bit more wary of him.
Maybe. I honestly don't know. I'm going to give Faletau the benefit of the doubt here and say, possibly, yes, it may have had a minimal impact, but I don't think it necessarily would have changed results. Because you could argue that maybe Billy wouldn't have finished the try that Faletau did, because he's just that yard slower.
Yeah, true.
So there's that perspective. But also what sort of when I was sort of thinking, so I just mentioned Kieran Reid, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. I've got so much respect for those bloody Kiwis now. Like I always did, but I don't mean as players, just the way they conduct themselves. I mean, their media, there was one thing which was, one paper was a bit of a joke because they're just after clickbait. But overall, even that last test where they were probably a little bit robbed, I think they were probably definitely robbed. But they were humble about it. They took it on the chin. I think if it had been the other way round, and I don't mean our players here or our Lions touring party, but our media, our public, myself included in that, I think we would have gone mental.
Okay, but we spoke about this a couple of days ago. And you're saying that they were robbed, and I'm assuming that you're talking about that penalty right at the end. Yes, I am.
And I know we spoke about it. So it was interesting because I was listening to the Egg Chasers podcast, and I think it was Phil from that who said he'd watched it and it wasn't actually a knock on. I'm like, what are you on about, mate? And then I watched it again. I'm like, Jesus, he's right. I've actually watched that. And I, guys listening, if you haven't already, go back and watch that. And again, this was just because I did it. And look where Liam Williams taps the ball. Just when he hits the ball, I think there's some writing on the pitch where you can see where he is, where he taps the ball, and where Ken Owens catches the ball. It's actually gone, if anything, slightly back. It's only because Liam Williams is smashed afterwards that he flies back that it looks like he's smashed it, he's knocked it forward. So I think it wasn't actually knocked forward anyway. However, so in theory, Ken Owens is then coming from an offside position, catches it, drops it. So in theory, that is a scrum. However, Romain Poit didn't know that and certainly didn't say that. So what I think here, Romain Poit actually got the right decision, but for the wrong reasons, like by luck.
Sure. But I guess that therefore means that from an All Black point of view, you can't really argue with that one.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't argue. But at the time, straight after a match, there's no way they know this.
No, of course. But
and they still
conduct
now themselves with that manner. Yeah.
No, true. They were good. Okay, so my next one for you is Sexton Farrell versus Farrell Teo.
Yeah, I like Sexton Farrell with Teo on the bench. I don't think we used Teo on the bench as much as we could have. It's so hard because actually Teo's another one who had a bloody good tour, didn't he? Like, he was really good.
I mean, he was great in that first test, and he completely shut
and he was
Sonny
great
Bill
in
down.
Midweek. Yeah.
I was quite surprised we didn't see him a lot sooner after Sonny Bill got sent off, to be honest. I thought that was a really good opportunity. And I know that the Sexton and Farrell thing had just got started and they wanted to see what happened with it. And as it turns out, it did work. But I felt like that was the perfect opportunity to say, no, we need a Teo now to punch hole. I mean, it's a shame, actually, that he didn't start Farrell Teo again in that game and then change it later.
Yeah. It's true. But I'm a massive fan of the 12 being the playmaker. You look at it, sort of New Zealand had it in the days gone past where it was, I believe, Conrad Smith there with Dan Carter. Well, look at the mighty England from 2003. You had Will Greenwood, who wasn't a 10, but still a good playmaker. I think having a playmaker at 12 really adds benefit. I believe in that game plan more than I believe in, let's call it Gatlin ball, as it's typically known.
Warren ball.
Warren ball, Gatlin ball, dickhead ball, whatever they want to call it. But I don't think that works as well as a 10-12 with both playmakers. Whether Sexton and Farrell are the correct 10-12, but when we see, because George taking it from an England perspective, I wouldn't change Ford Farrell at 10-12. The argument there, and we'll go into this another time, is then does Teo go to 13? Does JJ stay there? But we'll
cover that.
Yeah.
Okay, no, fair enough. Okay, so Sexton and Farrell, I think I agree with you. I think Sexton and Farrell proved that they had that was the right combination for the way that the Lions needed to play, and it's probably one of the reasons why they were able to keep things as close as they did, because they were able to create opportunities. And actually, that whole Sexton old school loop that he loves to do, I noticed Farrell was doing that by the end.
Yeah, how is that working? Like,
literally,
I remember like 13, 14, we used to do that, and everyone's like, wow. Then everyone did it, and international teams were like, come on, we're good players now. But it does work.
Yeah. There you go, kids. Listen to your coaches, because the basics can still win test matches.
Well, kids, listen to your coaches, unless, as one of my old coaches from school used to do, tells you not to take a towel to the shower and air dry. If they say that, don't listen to them. Trust me on this, all right? And I don't want to talk about this anymore.
That's probably a good idea. Okay, so in closing then, the big one, in a Lions All Blacks super team, which Lions do you include?
Okay, so quite a few. So you've got front row. I don't know enough about front row. I'd probably have the Lions front row. Second row, I'd have Ritalik and Itoje.
Yeah.
Back row, I'd have Kieran Reid, Sam Cane from the All Blacks, obviously. And then at 6, I think I'd have Sean O'Brien. I thought he had a brilliant tour.
Okay.
At 9, I think Conor Murray edged it.
I agree.
10, oh Jesus, I wouldn't want to leave Bowden Barrett out. I'd go, so 10, 12, I'd go Bowden Barrett, Farrell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he had a great one. 13, I'd go Jonathan Davies. Wings, I would go Surveyor and Watson. I know Surveyor only got last match, but I just think he's just
I don't know. I would be tempted to go Daly and Watson. Apart from anything else, just for that long boot.
It's huge. I just love watching him whack that ball. Fullback, I would go Geordie Barrett as well. I think Liam Williams had a great tour, but Geordie Barrett, God, he's going to be good. He's
going to
good.
be ridiculous. Yeah, he's good now. He's going to be ridiculous. No, I agree. I think I think, as you say, I mean, we know our backs a little better than we know our forwards. Is it
Yeah.
Kano who's six for the All Blacks?
Yeah.
So he's the only one, isn't he, that you against Sean O'Brien? It's probably quite a tight call.
And that is a tight call. I just thought O'Brien had a brilliant tour.
He did.
And
well,
I
do you know what, though? That's
off the edge.
I didn't do the maths in my head while you were going along there, but I think that's more Lions than All Blacks.
3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, I'm counting. 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's 8-7.
There you go.
Oh, maybe even 9-7, 9-7, 9-6, or 8-7. So yeah, I think I would have a few more Lions.
I mean, that says a lot, doesn't it?
It does. It really, when else would you ever say that about an All Blacks team, especially this team?
And if you'd asked people before this tour, possibly 2 or 3 Lions might have squeezed in, and even then it would have probably been almost a case of you've got to have some. But yeah, who would have said Farrell over Sonny Bill Williams?
Yeah,
before the tour. Well, as good as we know,
you and me would have.
Yeah,
but
we would
yeah. Anyone who isn't in love with the guy may not have.
But yeah, so okay, well, I think that's probably a strong place to finish our Lions tour roundup. I'm sure we'll reflect back on things as we're discussing future. Obviously, when we're talking about England and we're talking about the Lions players, we're going to be talking bits and bobs about Lions again. But yeah, I think that rounds up the Lions for another 4 years.
God, that's depressing. But yeah.
It is depressing. And if we're still here in 4 years, guys, then things have gone incredibly well. And the only way that happens is if you get onto iTunes, rate us, review us, share with your friends, tell them about us, get in touch with us, get involved, join the conversation. Social media, we're at England Rugby Pod. The website, www.englandrugbypod.com. And we will be back probably next Tuesday, but we'll look to create a schedule that's a bit more regular than that. Maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays. It remains to be seen. Lots to work out, but we plan to bring you plenty more. And obviously, it's all back on England again.
Yes, you built into that really well. Well done. I didn't know where you were going with it, and then I was like, oh, clever. But yeah, back to the England stuff. And yeah, guys, thanks very much for listening. We really appreciate your support.
Take care, guys.
Cheers.